Hello and welcome everybody. Over there in Florida is my friend Rish.
I'm Rish. Over there in Scotland is my friend Roland, by way of China, by way of Germany.
Several times removed, indeed. Yeah,
Yes,
removal is the key word. You got some news about what's going on in this world, Rish.
yes, actually I do. So Sudan has been all over the news, and to be honest, I didn't know much about the conflict. I was aware of where Sudan was geographically, and I was aware of that it had a civil war and they split, but I didn't really know much, so I dove into it, and I thought it would be good to just go into some of the history as a lead up to
Yeah.
what's happening there now, because little old Sudan is problems there actually mean problems for the world, potentially. So, without getting too much into the rest of the video, let's dive into the nuts and bolts here. So, a little history on the country. I'm going to start in 1983 just because that's the most logical point to start for the current conflict given the key players. So,
Yeah.
there was a civil war in 1983 when a military regime tried to impose Sharia law as part of its overall policy to Islamize all of Sudan. The Sudanese People's Liberation Army led insurrections in the south, which was a region dominated by animalists and Christians. Obviously, animalists, that's a form of a pagan religion, being very far removed ideologically from
Yeah.
Christians and Muslims and Jews. The difference between Christians, Muslims, and Jews is actually a lot tighter than a lot of the hardliners in those three factions would lead you to believe.
I was gonna
It's
say this is all very closely related religions by their origin and then by their core beliefs. Yeah.
but any of the Judeo-Christian, Islam, you know, religions, they all have in their own way a history of exterminating pagans. But
Yeah.
to hear that they were cleansing the Christians, that's really saying, hey, we're going all the way with this. So that led to 2005, a comprehensive peace agreement, which was the U.S. played a key role in negotiating this. It officially ended the conflict and set the date for the referendum for independence for South Sudan.
Yeah.
That was held and overwhelmingly passed on July 9th of 2011. So that's how the current players linked up. The current players, you have one side, which is General Abdel Fattah Burhan. He is the head of the Sudanese Armed Forces, also called the SAF. They are backed by Egypt, that faction. Egyptian troops are actually found at the airport the first day of the conflict in an airport in northern Sudan. And then they were released a few days later because the other side, led by General Mohammed Hadim Daglo, I'm probably butchering that last name. He is the leader of the paramilitary group, the Rapid Support Forces, and it was just good PR. They don't really want Egypt to get involved, so they went ahead and released the Egyptian troops back into the Egyptians. They didn't release them to the SAF; they released them to Egypt itself. And the militia, the Rapid Support Forces, otherwise known as the RSF, they grew out of Darfur's notorious Janjaweed militias, and they are backed by Russia, with
Yep.
the actual boots on the ground being supplied by the Wagner Group.
Wagner.
Yeah. So these two guys actually have a lot of positive history together. They, being the two sides, the General Abdel and General Mohammed of the SAF and the RSF, respectively, they until very recently were close allies. So the let's see, Together, they led coups in 2019 and in 2021. Remember the 2021 coup, because that's going to have international implications. So
Yep.
let's stick a pin in that. We will circle back. And previously, those two gentlemen in their fights against the SPLA, which is the Sudanese People's Liberation Army, they were backed by the UAE and the Saudis. So the easiest way to figure out why the UAE and the Saudis would back them is, well, one of the group, the Saudis backed their brand of Islam. And, so it's classic Sunni Shiite. Saudi Arabia and the UAE loves to fund proxy wars. Both of their people hate getting their actual hands dirty, but plenty of their leaders have tremendous amounts of blood on their hands. So until recently, these guys were friends. Like I said, they fought together. They led a coup in 2019, 2021. And basically, the current issues are the leader of the militia, the RSF, with the coup that ousted Omar al-Bashir. He thought that he was going to be the main guy, but the guy, General Abdel of the SAF, he was the general of the conventional forces. So they have about 125,000. The militia is said to be at about 100,000, but the militia has far better training and weapons. Again, we're going to circle back to that. So these guys, they were good, and the militia general, he was relegated to a deputy role. He didn't see that. They were working on, after they ousted the transitional government in 2021, they were working on consolidating their power and bringing the two sides and making them, basically the militia would become a branch of the armed forces. But it broke down, and sadly, these two guys are not the African exception to the rule. They are the examples of the rule, being they are dictator. They're both wannabe dictators. Both of them in their own right are a form of dictator, and they have an army. Sadly enough, this is a tale as old as time across human civilizations, but it seems to really be picking up a lot. It never really died out in Africa. The leader of
Well, there's a couple
the
of
militia
reasons.
has been called a warlord several times, and this is going on for decades. They're accused, both sides are accused previously in their coups of human rights atrocities, violations. These are people that are willing to put the other to the sword. The civilian casualties are acceptable if it justifies their goals. These, by all accounts, neither one of these are what you would call good men. So Omar al-Bashir reigned for almost 30 years after they took over, after his faction, the SPLA, took over in 1983. So there was a big push to get him out. And these two guys, when they were friends, they took him out. And I love it. According to the AP, the former friend said that Bashir was taken to a safe place. Some of the sources I'll be citing in this episode are the AP, also PBS, CBS, and CNN. And then there was a bit from Al Jazeera, but I refuse to use their information. That's personal preference. So the current death toll, according to the World Health Organization, sits around 420. It's got to be higher. I say normally the numbers are off by a factor of 3.
Put a couple of zeros behind that, possibly.
Yeah. So the fighting kicked off on the 15th, but that wasn't. Both sides knew they were going to go at it before then, as evident by the Egyptian troops being in place day one of the conflict, ready to go. And also, here's the fun part. Well, I'm gonna tease it just a little bit. All right, one more date to remember. Saturday, April 22nd, the U.S. government had stated that the U.S. military evacuated successfully the U.S. embassy in the capital of Khartoum, and around 70 U.S. government workers were evacuated, and temporarily the embassy is listed as being closed and unavailable to offer routine or emergency consulate services to U.S. citizens due to ongoing security situation. So let's get into the fun part. Why is this an international thing? Well, the reason why the militia is better equipped and better trained is because of the Wagner Group. They have a previous relationship. Wagner denies any involvement in the current conflict. They also deny propping up a rogue Libyan general. I have his name somewhere. There we go.
Dude,
Khalif
whatever. I mean,
Haftar.
it is.
Yeah, Khalif Haftar.
It is
So he's a
common
rogue
knowledge
Libyan
that
general.
Wagner is across the northern Africa, right up to Syria. So
Well,
it's common knowledge.
they're admittedly in 30 nations currently.
Yeah.
So they're propping up a rogue Libyan general. They used their transport plane 2 days before the start of armed conflict. It was seen Wagner supply plane was flying from an air base held by the rogue Libyan general to Syria, to Russian and Wagner bases. And they picked up surface to air missiles along with some other goodies, of course, small arms, ammunition, grenades. And they brought that back, and that was given to the militia, which bolstered the militia and emboldened them, because now they had an ability, because they don't have an air force. Now they have ability to combat the regular armies.
The Air Force, yeah.
Yeah, the Air Force. So now they got some surface to air missiles. So now all of a sudden Russia's involved. And people will ask, well, why would Russia care? There's
Oil and
the two
gas.
biggest. Actually, no, not this time. That is a common theme, but not this time.
No, there's a couple of other resources, but the biggest thing for the Sudanese government, South Sudan and Sudan, is oil rights, essentially.
Right, but that's not why Russia cares. Russia doesn't give two flying Fs about South Sudan. So what they want from the Sudanese is they made a deal with the general of the militia. So that was, let's see. All right. So the military leadership of Sudan granted access to the country's gold in exchange for their military support and political support. The entire thing started because Russia wanted gold to circumvent Western sanctions after the 2014 Crimean invasion. And then it intensified even more so after the 2020 invasion of Ukraine, when the sanctions got even higher. That is the main reason. In the short term, they need to circumvent. That's why Russia has oil and gas. But what Russia needs is
just to interject
spendable income.
Just to interject, if they are going after this kind of resource from a country like Sudan, for example, who probably doesn't have all that much gold reserves, I mean, that just says how dire the economic situation in Russia is, and that they are willing to use military force, if not directly, then by proxy, to improve their economic situation, which is basically crap if you're looking at it like that.
And speaking, if Russia's that desperate, imagine what kind of shape Sudan's in, that they said, yeah, come on, we have something you want, you have something we need. Now, the second big reason is before, and this is where we come back to 2021. Back when they were still friends, they staged a 2021 coup against the transitional government. Russia in 2020 had worked out a deal, had signed it with the transitional government to build a naval base up to 300 personnel, up to 4 ships, including a repair dock, and they were going to allow nuclear powered vessels that would essentially put right in the Red Sea, just
Yeah.
south of the Suez Canal, one of the most major trading connection points in the world. It would have gave Russia a choke point where they could have put nuclear powered weapons, the aircraft, whatever
Yeah.
counts for an aircraft carrier these days. So they actually wanted that government to go through because now that the military, well, now the military is fighting the military, but the military government kind of killed that deal. And they've been very hesitant because why would they want Russia that much in bed when they had made that deal? They didn't make that deal with the military government, which is now back in charge. They made it with the transitional civilian government. So that's why Russia gives it in. And here's why the rest of the world should care. Not only is Russia circumventing the sanctions, which are supposed to help the world and help Ukraine, but 5 out of 7 of Sudan's neighbors, that does include South Sudan, we're since 2005, I'm referring to them as an independent nation, which they became in 2021. 5 of the 7, including South Sudan, neighbors have had similar issues recently where the government is either under collapse, threat of collapse, or in dire straits,
Yep.
bankrupt, military organizations, militant groups operating freely in the country. So that's 5 of their 7 neighbors, and some of their neighbors are important global players when it comes to resources and oil and gas. Now, just on the other side of Sudan, on the other side of the Red Sea, do you know what country is right across the little
There
sea
is
there?
one country right across,
Yeah,
and
there is one.
if you go a little bit further north, there is another country that is of concern for us. So
Yeah.
it's essentially the area around there, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, and on the other side, Israel. Yeah.
And of
So
course, Egypt.
Egypt
We
on the
need a
African side. Yeah.
functional Egypt. The world needs a
Well,
functional Egypt.
look, just before I start with a bit of ranting about Africa, is there is another bit of information that I just came across is that Putin fired one of his admirals for
Yeah.
apparent refusal to put more men in the field. Keep that in mind. So I think the biggest problem that stokes these conflicts in Africa is that the borders of Africa were not drawn by Africans, essentially.
No.
So what we have is when you speak to someone from Africa, is where are you from, who are you, what are you? A lot of them will go, oh, I'm from this tribe or from that tribe.
It's tribe,
Uh,
then country, then Africa.
uh, even I would even say it's tribe, and then there is a wide gap. Yeah.
Yes.
So there is this kind of thing. And what you talked about, well, they're basically performing an ethnic cleansing there, or a cleansing based on religion or whatever. However,
Mhm.
we need to keep in mind that slavery and ethnic cleansing
It's
through
still
through
alive and
war
well.
is not only alive and well, it's throughout history the norm, not the exception. So
Yes.
slavery existed. Look, at this moment in time, there is more slaves in the Middle East or Africa than throughout the entire slavery history of the US were there. So let's keep that in mind. Let's keep a cool head when we talk about these issues. There is in Africa, there is no such
And
thing
to put in
as nationhood.
perspective, at the start of the Civil War, there was 4 million enslaved
Yeah.
Africans in America. So we're not talking peasantry
I mean,
numbers
no, no.
here.
I mean,
These
I
are
don't
big
mean
boy
at
numbers.
peak point. I don't
Yeah.
mean at peak point or anything. I mean combined throughout the history of
No,
slavery in
I'm
the
just
U.S.
saying, just to
But
put it in perspective, just
yeah,
at the beginning of the American Civil War, there was 4
slavery
million
is a
just then.
worldwide and huge problem.
Yeah.
And going
Always has
back
been.
to there is no nationhood ingrained in a lot of people. It is very easy to
Well, and least of
even
all in Africa.
foster warlordism. Yeah. So you have these two guys, and one of them thinks he's a bigger cheese than the other, and they also think, well, I'm a bigger cheese than the actual government. there is no such thing as nationhood or statehood in such a sense.
No, in Sudan
And
alone, there's over 30 different ethnic groups.
yeah, and
In
that is look,
Sudan alone, there's 30 different. Not in Africa.
and
In Sudan
that
alone,
yeah, there
30
is.
different.
When you go to Nigeria, it's even more. But the point is what you
Yeah.
said about civilian casualties. Civilian casualties, again, this is really a Western thing that we are talking about civilian casualties. There is no such thing as a civilian in this kind of mindset. And since we mentioned Russia and by experience also the Soviet Union, why did they and why does Russia have this kind of view on weapons of mass destruction, such as nuclear weapons? Is for them this is just another tool of war. This up until the mid 80s under Gorbachev, they didn't even acknowledge there was something called nuclear winter. Yeah, this is just a bomb. It goes off and that's it. Yeah, there was
Nothing else
no
happens.
there was no understanding until Reagan. Until Reagan, basically, there was no understanding in the Soviet Union. If we even launch as much as one nuke, the Americans are going to launch theirs. So, and this is what I don't want to say cooler heads prevailed, but go back to what we said about bullying. A bullying is only challenged when confronted with an equal or larger force.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of, well, I'm going to nuke you. Well, we have more nukes than you and they work. Fuck off. Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
see,
this is the kind of thing.
tough guys don't act tough to other tough guys because they know
No.
there's going to be some
There's some
damage.
people
There's
with
going to be a body count.
substance
Yeah,
in it, and
there's going to be a
that's
body count.
that's the thing I want to go there. But I want to close down what you said about the Egyptians. Going further back in history, Egypt and Sudan were one country or one colony. So Egypt, Sudan, the Sudano-Egypt
It
Egyptian
was
British
all
colony.
UK. Yeah.
Yep.
The
So
empire, the sun never sets on the British Empire till
about the
freedom
evacuation,
reigns.
the Americans just said they got all their people out.
Now here's the thing. We have, I think, 16,000 civilian US citizens that
Wow.
live in Sudan. There's also a very strong Indian population that lives in Sudan, but it is not the policy of the United States of America to evacuate every single citizen from a country they chose to move to and live to. It is our policy to at any means necessary evacuate all U.S. officials, diplomats, and people employed by the U.S. government at the embassy that are U.S. citizens. Those people were sent there on diplomatic mission. Those people, the U.S. government has a tool, the U.S. military, to fulfill their obligation to those people when they ask them to go there. We do not have, we as in the American government, the American people, the American military, the American taxpayer, do not have any sort of obligation to the people who chose to go there and live.
Careful.
I'm not saying we won't do something
about that. So
look at U.S. Find me a U.S. law that says that we have to evacuate people who are exercising their rights as an American to express their free will peacefully.
I could give you the law in Germany, but that's beside the point.
America doesn't have one. We have the Bill of Rights. If you want to go somewhere and do something stupid, you can go to Iran. You can't get a direct flight, but you were told, just like North Korea, if you go there, what happens, dude.
Not the legal base in international law that the Germans told me. But besides the point, what I was saying, we are talking about scenes. Well, right now, I was going to say there's 4,000 British citizens in Sudan, and screaming to be evacuated. And first of all, how are we going to accomplish that? We don't have a bloody aircraft carrier there. We don't have a troop ship there to load up all these people.
America has a base close by in Djibouti. If we wanted this conflict to be over, it would be over.
Wait,
For once, we're minding our own business.
problem with that. Problem
We
with
have a
that. I was going
military
to go
base
there.
in an
So
adjacent country. We've done more with less
look at it from this point of
on
view.
accident.
When you are doing that, even evacuating diplomatic personnel, it is essentially the scenes from Rules of Engagement. Marines flying in with their helicopters into enemy
Mhm.
territory. And now there is this thing, what you said about the one of the side at least has modern anti-aircraft equipment. Yeah.
Yes.
So and it is very, very tempting for some people to shoot at an American helicopter.
But see, here's the thing that both sides knew we were coming, and we helped broker a 72-hour ceasefire so that us and anybody else who wanted to go into the Capitol and get out their diplomats could. That ceasefire broke down inside of 10 minutes. So both sides knew American aircraft were going to be going to the American embassy. You want to put a shoulder fire missile at one of those aircraft? Guess what happens next, buddy? Yeah, your insurgency might live on because that's not our strong suit, but your ability as a effective fighting force and definitely all of your leadership will be deleted from Earth.
Well, that is the thing
And
where
that
it
wouldn't help their
might
civil
go.
war.
It
So they
wouldn't
don't
be
shoot at
helping. Yeah.
Americans.
So
Yeah. Well,
look at
they're
what
not
happened
stupid.
during Operation Frequent Wind, when the Americans pulled out their personnel from South Vietnam. So essentially, the North Vietnamese knew what is happening,
Mhm.
and they were not interfering at large with uh, with the evacuation process, because they very well knew if they start actively and consistently shooting at the evacuation, Americans have incentive to throw a couple of bombs more, and they were about to win. So why would you jeopardize
Yeah.
that?
Well,
But
look at a way closer and more recent. Look at the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
yeah,
They weren't trying to shoot our planes down. Yes, some service members tragically lost their lives guarding the wire, but I guarantee you the people that pulled that trigger, the Taliban deleted those guys. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Are you
yeah.
stupid? But
But look,
since Afghanistan came up, that is a U.S. concern that if Sudan does destabilize and becomes yet another failed state, and with their history of extreme Islam and Sharia law, could it turn into a situation where it's a crisis? Look at the Afghan women. Look at, especially if they're 20 years old, they grew up with a war and then subsequent fighting, but freedom, ability to go to school, medical access. Could Sudan turn into the African
Afghanistan.
version of Afghanistan? Because it is a very real possibility.
Look,
And now I worry
I have
about
to say,
the people. The
I
people will
have to
suffer
say,
because, and
we
you know, and
are.
let me get one more thing out because I don't want to forget this one because it speaks to your point. When I say they put the sword to the civilians, if they see them as a different ethnic group, they don't look at it as killing civilians. They look at it as one less enemy to take
Yeah,
out later. A lot of these African countries, the only thing that stops the ethnic cleansing is when both sides have guns.
yep.
When one
Look,
side's more powerful than everybody else, that's when the body count just, they don't bury them, they
goes
just
up.
stack
Yep.
them up.
No, no, no. It's exactly what I was saying.
This
What I
could
was
be
going to say.
horrible.
First of all, we as the Americans don't want to be drawn in. The French got their people
No,
out.
we're
The
pulling
British
back.
have their
Look at us.
people
We're
out.
pulling back globally
You got
from
you
many
got your
places.
people out, and I was going to say about I am of the same opinion as you. If you are going to a place where if you do even your basic research about the country, this is what it's like there, must conclude that this is dangerous, and you are still going, that
We
is
have
you
a
yourself
scale.
putting
Our
yourself in
government put
harm's
out a
way.
scale. No, we
So,
give every single country on earth, including us, a safety rating.
yep,
The government did, even you could do your research in 5 minutes and find out, hey, something might
exactly.
happen. But the government's been doing this since its existence for every
Look,
country
when
that
I
if you
look,
go there's something. Yeah.
there is, I mean, the German Foreign Service also has, like the State Department, has a country file, so to speak. And
Every Western
they,
nation
yeah,
says don't go to these places. They
yeah.
hate us.
So if, well, not only they hate us, it's when you look at that situation, you don't want to be drawn in it. And now picking up what you said about Taliban, Afghanistan, Sudan, the situation of women, and so on. Let me just put this question out, and then elaborate on it. Has our engagement actually made the situation better? No, it hasn't. So,
In
and what
Afghanistan
would no,
or in Sudan.
either way. And what I'm going to say is, as short, brutal, and inhumane it sounds, building a wall around it and wait until they figure it out themselves is the better option. We don't lose money, people, or anything. And look at it from this point of view. Let's take Afghanistan, for example. They are much further
No,
along the road.
there's precedent for this. There's precedents for this because World War II interrupted a Chinese civil war. And after World War II, the Chinese went back to their civil war.
Right, went back at it. Exactly.
But we didn't go there. We're like, nope.
Look,
Let
there
them
is
fight.
the danger. There is. I think China is also a good example. But let me start with Afghanistan. So let's say the Taliban is back in power and
They are.
women's rights. What's going to happen if literally the international community would say no, not with you guys?
Sudan
And
is highly dependent on foreign aid, for those who
exactly,
don't know.
it is one of the
Highly
poorest
dependent
countries.
on food
Look,
imports, energy.
when the Taliban took over in the 90s, the country went really downward and went poorer and poorer. So there is a common saying. I can't back it up with data right now, but the key to economic improvement in Africa is educating the women and, yeah, basically advancing the rights of women in Africa. And there is,
And keeping the resources that are in Africa,
yeah.
building Africa.
So there is that. So now the Taliban go the other way, and things start going downhill. So at some point, even the most generous donor, yeah, even the most generous donor will say this. Well, this is a bottomless pit. I keep throwing money at it so that they don't blow up my people and blow up people I don't like. But I can't keep financing that. So
Well, and at some point, if they make the news too much, then you will be seen as financing
exactly.
the killing of ethnic cleansing, killing of
Yep.
minorities, killing of
So
persecuted religious groups, women, children. You want your money
look,
backing that up?
we
That pulls a
also
lot
we
of.
also have a precedent that international isolation in relatively short time turns the country around. And the reason why South Africa dismantled its nukes and ended apartheid was basically no one was playing with them anymore. And we have, look, we have in case of North Korea, I think that is the best example of nobody wants to play with them. And yet, some way through the back door, the Chinese keep propping up that regime.
Yeah, but
But
it's in their interest to prop up the regime so that
up to a
North
point,
Koreans don't stream into China. And now it's a
exactly.
China problem
That's the only
in China. Right now,
reason.
North Korea is a Chinese problem
Now,
in North Korea. They don't want
so
a North Korean problem in China.
and I had, I was part of a very large discussion about potential scenarios for North Korean-Chinese relationship. And one of the scenarios is, what if Kim suddenly vanishes, dies, or whatever? Is if
His
China
sister,
wanted,
his
if
sister
China
looks to be the heir apparent.
looks to be the heir apparent, she is definitely not what China wants.
Hey, it would be a fucking huge step forward for women's rights in North Korea.
I doubt it. I doubt
The
it.
first
But
female
look,
leader.
Yeah, the dear leader. But what essentially what would happen if the Chinese really wanted to? They would take over North Korea within a day. When you look at the northern part of North Korea, it is basically China already. Economically, there is only China. Yeah. And all the money that is there in the northern part of North Korea is held by Chinese. There is shitloads of smuggling going on back and forth across the border. And the reason why China is reluctant to do it now or ever is, well, then we have Chinese soldiers at the DMZ, and that is going to start a war sooner or later.
Well, that's
The
why the
temptation is
U.S.
just too
That's
big.
why the U.S. never put troops on the ground in North Vietnam, because they saw what happened in Korea.
Yeah.
Well, China saw what happened in Korea too. You know, they didn't just exactly waltz in and save the day. They died. A lot of them died, and they only got
Quite a
half the
few.
country. Yeah.
So, I mean,
But the
we
US and
can go
China
back
know
to
what's going
that.
to happen because they already did it. That's why they didn't do it in
Exactly the point.
Vietnam. They just bombed the
So
shit out of it.
the other scenario is, and that is even less tolerable for China, that if there was such a thing as a collapse of North Korea and an incorporation into South Korea as a unified Korea, and even the South Koreans don't want this anymore. The South Koreans looked at the German reunification and said, well, no, no bloody way. This is, in case of Germany, it was two relatively similar population groups with
But
the
it's never good
minority.
for the side that's prosperous because you're about to
Yeah,
half your standard of living.
and
Half,
look at it from this
half.
point of view. Eastern Germany was the most prosperous country in the Eastern Bloc by a mile,
Because it was
and they
closest
were
to the
very,
West.
very well educated. And yet, it's really a thing where we say financially, economically, it has led to a situation that is really unfavorable for all of us.
Yeah, but see,
The
that's also
different
like saying
different topics.
Kansas has the least amount of shark attacks in the
Yeah.
US. Well, that's because it's furthest away from the sharks.
As no, back to this
My
situation.
hey, my
Obviously,
heart and prayers goes out to the Sudanese people because just a small amount, it's only a week old and it's already looking like
it's
it has the
already looking really
potential to
bad.
be really bad. A lot of foreigners who have blogs and stuff like that, they're going to the supermarkets right now, and this again, this is a problem that happens in Africa, and this is a problem that happens in most war-torn places. They don't have any water, but in Africa, it always seems to just be that much more of a problem.
Well,
Akon
no,
can't save everybody, but he's
look at
trying.
um, let's go back to what I said about the Taliban. At some point, they will
Not a
realize,
fan.
well, no, absolutely not. And if you continue to prop up these kind of regimes, these extremists, whatever flavor they are, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it is just going beyond the half life of it. You know what I mean? So if North Korea didn't have the support of China, they would have been done and over. So
Yeah.
what we are seeing in China is really a regime that has optimized the height of the fall. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that, and even dear leader Deng Xiaoping said one day the Chinese people will see through the scam, and
Mm-hmm.
then we need to have money and get out fast.
Yeah.
So that
No,
is
you
why
need the money
Deng,
where you're going
yep,
already there.
Deng had $3 billion outside the country when he died. So and there is rumor that she has a couple of billion more if need be. So no, the thing is you have when you look at China is after
If only there
Tiananmen.
was an island fortress close to there that he could run away from that the PLA couldn't necessarily get to him.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna
No
happen.
shit.
No.
Hey, that
That
would be a quick
plane,
into an invasion right there. Hey, we
um,
got she.
my my estimate is that either a Taiwanese or a Chinese missile would put that plane out of its misery. That's just my opinion. But
I
look at
think
it.
the fight between China and Taiwan, if she gets on a plane in between those two areas, I don't care if it's just to fly circles. The real fight between China and Taiwan is going to be arguing over whose missile hit first.
Well, there is a certain desire on both sides at that moment. But what I'm going to say
Not
is,
who's in the right, who's in the wrong. It'd be
in
no, we
China,
killed
you
him. No,
can
we killed
see right now that you have a large population increasingly upset at their situation. And
him. And they're
half
young
a year
males.
ago, you had massive riots in Shanghai,
Young males.
and yeah, and particularly because it is Shanghai is possibly the place where such a thing would start. But what I'm saying is you could see when you saw these riots, or when you saw the recent riots in southwestern China. What was it? Chengdu? I don't recall the name. Either something with C. And you could see when you saw the people, they have absolutely no fear about what is going to happen to them because they know whatever is going to happen to them now that they put this out is not as bad as the situation they are currently in.
Hey,
So
death
when there
is
is no
easy.
positive
Life is
outlook,
hard.
so
The only thing they have left to lose is their life. Okay. So,
now
so like I said, it's easy to die. It's hard to live when you don't have food, when you can't
exactly.
provide, when you have nothing. Some would even say fighting to try to change that for the
Now
next generation would
I
be a
had
noble
discussion
death.
with people that said we should have completely isolated China after Tiananmen, and initially I would agree, but the post Tiananmen development in China, the economic boom, the openness, the taste of life, if you wish, has brought these people, especially the young ones in their 20s and 30s, they, as much as they possibly believe the propaganda and hate the West, yeah, they are also asking themselves, well, why does the West have refrigerators, Coca-Cola, and so on, and doesn't give a
Yeah,
flying F? Yeah.
and they also university at Cambridge, Oxford, Stanford,
Yeah.
Yale, yeah,
Look,
Cornell.
I have to say that is just a means to an end. As much as they deny it, is the first reason is they want out.
I talk a
Secondly,
lot of shit about New Jersey. Guess where you don't ever see my ass? In New Jersey.
yeah, but you see, that is the hypocrisy. That is the hypocrisy. Oh, America bad. Yeah,
I ain't
why
trying
are
to
you
get
studying in
whacked.
America? Yeah. So
Yeah.
there is this hypocrisy, and they know they are talking bullshit. And the more this is being emphasized on them, no, you're talking bullshit. You're talking bullshit. Yeah, why are you here if you hate it? There is one scene when I was um, my research master is I had a colleague from Iran, and there was another guy from Iran, and he was talking in Arabic on the phone, and you could see my friend getting more and more agitated. And at some point, he looks over to the guy and shouts something in Arabic. So the other guy flushes, goes beet red, and gets out of the
Um,
room.
are you sure it was Arabic? In Iran, they speak Farsi, is the dominant
Farsi,
language.
Arabic, Persian
Just
Farsi,
curious. I'm
possibly.
sure most people
Look,
speak both.
no idea what it is, no idea what it
Yeah.
is. So, and I asked him, hey, dude, what's going on? He said, well, he was slugging off how bad this place is, that everybody is just a pig and infidel and so on. And I
Then
just asked
fuck
him,
off.
dude, if you don't like it, exactly that's what he said in the same language. You know, if you don't like it, f off.
Yeah.
So really, there is also a thing that you can look it up. The one of the former mayors of Rotterdam, city in the Netherlands, immigrant city, is a Muslim, and in his after his election, he said, that we are one country, no matter what your belief is. And if some of my fellow Muslims don't like it here, they can go back to their paradise.
Mhm.
So, but going back to what I said, if you deprive these populations, whether it's, Sudan and Afghanistan won't matter that much to them because they don't know what Coca-Cola is. But the people in China or in
Yeah,
North
I'm worried
Korea, they know
about
what
the
Coca-Cola is.
terrorist training camps, the brutal oppression of minorities, women, ethnic groups. I'm worried about
Yeah.
brutal oppression of religion. But I'm
Look,
from a
as I
place
said,
where it's literally in our highest laws that those things are God-given rights. So to
yeah,
me, of course, I'm going to worry about those things because as an American, these are
as a
the
human
ideas
being,
that we built our country on, and
as a
that most
human
people
being,
in
yes,
this country still believe in.
I'm totally with you. As a
Yeah.
human being, I wouldn't
It
want to see
sucks. As a
other
human,
human
it
beings
it,
suffer.
it
Yeah,
sucks.
especially if it's absolutely not necessary. We are, believe it or not, we are
They almost had it
economically
worked out.
look, we are economically globally at the
This
global level
almost was avoided.
at a level where we can all have a decent life. Why is it not the case?
But
Yeah.
here's the thing, neither one of these two dicks should be dictators. There,
Well,
there was
look,
already
let me
there was
put it that
already a
way.
transitional government to a
There would be
civilian
people
leadership.
that say
Democracy.
the solution is made of two bullets. I'm a person that says 50 cal will go through both of them.
Yeah.
So, and
And see, I'm
unfortunately,
American. I say we already have a predator on station with Hellfires. We're just waiting for some kid, some 19-year-old kid in Arizona in a steel box playing Game Boy in real life Call of Duty, jacked up on Mountain Dew to go like this.
we certainly would have the ability, but question is that really a fight
Today.
we want to have right now?
No, or we'd already be doing it.
Exactly.
Like I've said, we've done more going off of less on accident.
So,
The US has accidentally changed regimes when we were just thinking about it. We're like, oh shit, well, we already did it. Well, okay, let's send them some money, get the jackals in there, the CIA money guys. Let's see if this guy's going to play ball. If not, the next time we're going to be sure that we're changing it. By the way, we'll send flowers. You're out.
look at it. Well,
My
my
point is,
take
if
on
the
it.
US wanted to intervene, we do.
Yeah, but we have other fish to fry right now. So,
We've always had fish to fry. Why don't y'all start spending 2% of GDP, God damn it?
so look, even if we did, I don't think we have the
Effectively
stomach for it.
spend. Effectively
So
spend. Don't just buy firecrackers.
no, as let's have an outlook. Let's have an outlook on this on the kind of scenario that I
Sudan, worst case for me, worst case, failed state, terrorist sponsored state, drug producing state, basically Afghanistan. Afghanistan, but worse than
I
Afghanistan is now,
am
where they're trying to play nice. That's for me, that's worst case.
I am
I can
more
see it going there.
concerned for the Middle East in that part, as you said, Shia, Sunni. What stops people? Yeah, what stops both sides there to have their own domestic little war down there? So
Somebody with a
without
bigger
thinking
stick
about that.
saying, knock it off. If one single oil tanker, something happens to it in the Red Sea, we're blaming y'all. We're blaming you. And then we're going to come and we're going to kill all of you. We're going to kill all
So
the leadership. We're going to destroy you. And then people are going to be fighting and they're not even going to know who's giving the orders.
so well,
And we're good at that.
I still think we have. Well, it seems like after 70, 80 years of peace especially in Europe, but relative peace across the world. I mean, what were the largest
Backed
conflicts?
by the U.S. Navy.
Yeah. So now let's say the U.S. Navy is focusing on
No, that is the reason
the
for
Pacific.
global trade. That's the
Yep,
reason for
exactly,
all the security where nations that
exactly,
before, if you wanted to trade, you better have a navy to protect your trade interest.
exactly. Look, that is
We
that is the
protected the
reason why the
world.
Germans built a fleet in the 1870s, 1890s, and came in conflict with England. But let's look at it. Let's spin this forward. But this news is additional confirmation
Wait, are
that
you talking about
Russia
could
is
this be a
going.
domino effect with some of the surrounding neighbors? Because some of its surrounding neighbors are teetering.
No,
You don't think
look.
so?
I don't think so. Um, let's just say it does go south and it becomes an extremist state with no effective control of the warlord government even.
Right.
So you have terrorist camp A on this side, terrorist camp B on that side. So first of all, these two camps are going to go at each
And
other.
you will have Russia supply whoever will give them their naval base.
Absolutely, look, absolutely. But
That's
at
not
the other
that's not
side
up
of
for
it, the
debate.
Russians
That's
need to
just
defend that place.
what's gonna happen.
So
And they will.
then you have other players in
Why
the
do you think
area
Russia
that are
was
going to
able to
finance
take
their own.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
why do you think Russia was able to take equipment and manpower out of Syria? Is because the U.S. is backing the other side, and we're both playing nice fighting ISIS. But Russia knows that it can pull that and put that in Sudan because the Americans are in Syria, and if they start to lose, they know when it really gets rough. If they start to fall, and we don't have that other stabilizing force, we will intervene because we're already at war with global war on terror. So we already have a doctrine, policies, and an extent existing
look, I don't
commitment.
see I don't see too much value in that base as now. Not for the Americans. It's more for Europe because a lot of trade goes through there.
Yeah, and
So
we
the
already
other
have a
thing is
base in the Red Sea.
the other thing is number one, you guys have a base there. Secondly,
Mhm.
is that
China
base
has one not too far away.
that Russian base is essentially cut off if we want it to be cut off.
Hmm.
So that's the other thing. Um,
But
then
Egypt,
certainly,
but see, here's it. No, not exactly, because Egypt and Russia are very close. If Russia can get them
on
through the
occasion,
Suez, Egypt will protect under the guise of free trade. E-
the Russians and the Egyptians are buddy buddy, but
well, Egypt was just about to supply them with a shit ton of rockets until they got caught. 20,000.
not that many, you know. So,
Tell that
but
to a Ukrainian on the front lines.
I think the Ukrainians are quite busy going from one part of the country of in the other and rolling the Russians back. So the reason why Western countries increasingly are pushing Zelensky to make some sort of deal is that we want to pull our guys out and put them into Asia so that she doesn't get stupid ideas. And
You
the
mean
other thing
act
is,
on the stupid ideas he already has? He's already thought this
yeah, I think
dumb
that's
stuff up
the better
before he's
way to
stupid
put it.
enough to implement these
But
dumb
the other
ideas.
the other thing is, I think we are at the stage, or the Taiwanese are at the stage where they say, well, we know it's coming. It is not coming tomorrow. We see she is getting ready for it, but we will be ready before him. So
Mhm.
in essence, is if the Taiwanese say we are preparing and we will be ready in 2027, no matter what the chairman does, they will be ready much earlier.
Oh
So
yeah.
that is just right now is the question. Look, the Taiwanese until a few years ago they had old M48s in frontline duties, with upgrades making them firepower-wise equivalent to an M60. So what Taiwan wants right now, and rightfully so, is a couple of submarines. Nobody wants to sell it to them. So I think the latest thing is the French are going to supply them. Doubtful after the Macron's visit. So I'm just wondering why the Japanese are not doing it, or why the Germans or the South Koreans are not doing it, because we essentially have the same stuff. It's differently named, differently equipped, but it's essentially an air independent
I
diesel
think
electric stuff.
Japan's constitution is holding them back from selling to Taiwan. Actually, I think they have a constitutional block on that.
They have a lot of problems
I'm
with
not
their
100%.
constitution in that. I would actually trust that.
Yeah, in
So
South Korea, it would be seen as a deck. I think for South Korea, it's basically don't shit where you live.
yeah,
Like they're not gonna let China, take Taiwan. They're gonna fight, but the Japanese even more so. But with Korean, I think it's more like we already have so many problems. Why make it worse for us?
yep.
China doesn't care if we sell to the Poles. We'll just sell to the Poles.
So yeah, here we are, and
that's a
it's
good
certainly
place
going
to
to,
wrap it.
yeah. So let's see what's.
So hopefully everyone is up to date on Sudan. For those who, like myself, who weren't really up on, Sudan in its current form, I hope you learned something. And we'd love to, if we forgot anything, let us know.
Yeah, like you said, good place to have a break. And yeah, doesn't look like we're getting much better news these days, but hopefully something better in our next video, Rish.
And if it happens, we'll talk about it.
Wish you all the best over there in Florida.
It's hard to be positive and honest when you watch the news. See y'all later.